Check this out. This is the best wood stove I have ever seen. Hands down. It can cook food and boil water. But the best part is it heats the place really well. It can easily bring the room temperature up to 30 degrees. So how is such a great wood stove made? Just keep watching and you will find out. The winter of 2023 was extremely cold. The wood stove the guy used to have at home was nowhere near enough for his heating needs. It wasted firewood and its heating performance was terrible. Especially when the weather got cold. It could not even heat up a single bedroom. So the guy decided he had to make a wood stove that is powerful and has excellent heating. Actually, making a stove like this is not that easy. The guy had tried many methods, but the stoves he made were never quite right. After a long time of trial and error and lots of thinking, he designed a wood stove with very strong performance. Now that he had the idea, he had to get started on it right away. So he took out a propane tank that had been sitting around and used at home for years, and without a second thought he began cutting it. Of course, before cutting he filled the tank with water. That way it not only removes any leftover liquid inside the propane tank but also makes cutting it much safer. Since the guy had already drawn up the design plans, the work went especially smoothly. First he marked lines where he needed to cut, and then with a few cuts he got it into the shape he wanted. A typical wood stove needs a firebox and a place for ash. So the guy tackled those two things first. He used the body of the propane tank as the firebox. Then cut openings on the side of the tank and attached legs. Next he made a drawer for the ash. He welded the finished drawer onto the opening. After welding, the next thing the guy needed to make was the cooking platform. Since the side of the original tank was curved, a pot would easily slide off, so he decided to modify the curved side of the tank into a flat surface. That way a pot sits very steady on it, and it also increases the heat radiating area. After that modification, the guy got a steel pipe to make the chimney. First he cut off one end of the chimney pipe, then at a 90-degree angle, he welded the two pipes together. Next he welded the steel pipe onto the chimney opening on the side. Then he attached a steel plate to the very top as support. He welded the steel plate and the base together. And just like that, the cooking platform was done. Next the guy got a piece of square tube. Then based on the dimensions he needed, he drew lines on the square tube and cut it with an angle grinder. These square tubes are the secret to why this wood stove heats so well. They are also something other wood stoves do not have. You will see what these square tubes are for in a bit. After cutting the square tubes, the guy lined them up one by one and welded them to the side of the wood stove. As you can see, the guy welded 5 square tubes on each side of the wood stove. These square tubes are meant to increase the heat radiating surface area of the stove. After welding it looked like this, but relying only on these square tubes to radiate heat naturally still gives limited heating. So the guy got another steel plate and modified it to make an air duct so the heat radiation would work even better. After the air duct was done, the guy installed the finished air duct around the square tubes and welded it to the square tubes. The purpose of this was to add a fan for forced air heat radiation. After the air duct was done, the guy got a scrap bicycle rim and cut the rim into sections and welded them to the bottom of the wood stove to use as legs. After welding, he welded a rectangular steel plate onto each leg, so the wood stove sits more stable on the ground. Next the guy took the other end of the propane tank that he had cut off earlier and used the angle grinder again to cut a round hole on the top. Then he welded the cut piece onto the other end of the wood stove. After welding he set it aside. Then he found a broken electric water heater and without hesitating he removed the outer shell and insulation of the water heater. After taking them off, the inner tank of the water heater came out. As you can see, the main parts the guy used to make this wood stove are all scrap materials. This not only recycles waste but also saves money on making the stove. After the inner tank was out, the guy first welded all the original water outlets shut. Then based on the diameter of the chimney pipe, he drew lines on the top and bottom of the wood stove. Then used the angle grinder to cut out circles. Finally he drilled water outlet holes on both ends. After drilling the holes he ran the chimney pipe through the center of the inner tank and welded it to the inner tank. This made a sealed water tank. It uses the heat from the chimney pipe to heat the water inside the tank, making full use of the heat. After welding, the guy got some spray paint and painted the finished parts to prevent rust. Once the paint was dry, the guy got 4 casters and attached them to the wood stove. That made it much easier to move the stove around. After the wood stove was finished, let us take a close-up look at the inside of the wood stove. Finally, the guy got a piece of fire-resistant glass and installed it on the fire door. That way he can always see how the fire is burning inside the stove. Then on the other side of the wood stove, the guy got an exhaust fan and attached it to the air duct. So when he turns on the power, the fan running will push all the heat from the wood stove into the room. After a whole day of hard work, the wood stove was finally done. In a bit he will add wood and test how well it actually works. As you can see, the guy first placed the wood stove in a corner of the room, then secured the legs. Next he attached the water tank to the chimney pipe, then ran the chimney pipe outside. After all the pipes were connected, the guy filled the water tank. Once the tank was full he could light the fire. You can see the guy get the wood he had split earlier, then put in a grate and light it with a torch. Because the firebox is pretty big, it did not take long for the flames to shoot up. Since the air intake and exhaust of the stove are well designed, the wood burns very vigorously. Then when he turned on the fan, the air vent of the wood stove started blowing out a steady stream of hot air. It feels much better than an air conditioner. After not too long of burning, you can see the water in the tank started boiling. Then you can drain the water out and cook with it. You can see the wood stove burning hotter and hotter. Sitting close to it feels like it is heating your face. Before long the food in the pot was cooked. After all the guy's hard work, a high-performance wood stove was finally built. You could say with this wood stove, no matter how cold the winter gets you do not have to worry. Alright, that is all for this episode. See you next time.